Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Hello. um, okay, I see people. Yeah, can you hear me okay, guys? You could write it in the chat.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, Rebecca. Yes.
Okay, awesome. It says my internet is unstable. Hopefully things go okay today. I'm not currently at my the place where I normally give the lectures. So I'm hoping the internet does okay. And if not, I'll take a look at how things look afterwards. I will record today's class. I'll record every class. So every time we meet for lecture, I'll record and I'll post those onto YouTube. So you'll be able to rewatch anything you may have missed. So you'll have that you'll have that available to you. In addition, I will have the lecture slides. So I will go through lecture slides today, but they'll also be available to you on Canvas. So I would recommend when we meet for lecture, you just try to take it in. You can make notes, but don't feel like you have to write everything down that's on the slides, because I will give you the slides at the end. Sometimes I might even give them to you ahead of time if I have them ready for you guys, okay? All right, with that, I'm gonna get started. We only have there's not that many people, but I'm sure I had to update Zoom. You may have had to update Zoom as well. So I think that probably happened for everybody. So I expect people will be trickling in, but I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'll say if you guys have any questions at any time, I'd prefer if you just write in the chat box that you have a question, and then I can, finish my sentence and then get to you, okay? That seems to work the best. This class has about 40 students in it. And so that way I can make sure I don't miss anyone's question. All right, I'm gonna share the screen. I should mention, you don't feel required to have your camera on. You don't need to have your camera on because especially for today, when I'm presenting the lecture slides, I'm not really even gonna be able to see you. But I will say, if you are going to leave your camera on, just be aware other people can see you. So be on, don't do, just know that people can see you if you have your camera on. Okay, so hopefully right now you can see the slides. Oops, hold on. Hopefully right now you can see the slide with my name on it and my email address.
An hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, yep, good. Good, people are muting when they come in, that's good. I'll be able to mute people as well. Yeah, so hopefully right now you can see the slide with my name on it. So I'm Dr. Rebecca Panko. You can just call me Rebecca, it's totally fine. My email address is rebecca.panko@rutgers.edu. Please take advantage of emailing me. Okay, no problem, Baba. Yeah, so I'm really good at turnaround time. So if you email me, I'll get back to you usually within a day. Unless it's the weekend, then it may take a little bit longer. So please, if you ever have a question about anything, or if you need an extension on an assignment or something like that, communicate with me so I know what's going on. All right. So, right, this is basic plant lecture, right? Basic plant science lecture, right? So I'll say this, everyone, this is a plant. All right, thanks so much, guys. Great first day. No, so it is basic plant science lecture, but it's like not that basic. It's still a biology class. We're still gonna have to learn certain terms. Some words will be unfamiliar to you, especially when we talk about cell types, but some words will be familiar to you, for example, like leaf and root and flower and things like that. So it's basic, but it's not quite that basic. It is at least a lot easier than like a physics class or a chemistry class or something like that. So yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than just this is a plant. Before I get into the class, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. So I lived in most of my adult life in New York City. Actually lived there as a kid as well, but then moved away when I was young because my parents are actually now retired national park rangers. So as a kid, we moved to the Everglades where I grew up, but then I moved back to New York. And basically, though, throughout my whole life, I've always been really interested in plants and understanding plants and just enjoying going out in nature whenever I could, even when I lived in New York City, like going to a little green space or something like that. I've always gotten a big kick out of that. So this is just showing you all like kind of different places I've been over my career doing different work with plants. And I went to graduate school at Rutgers Newark and NJIT, where I studied how cities affect the evolution of plants. So I looked at this little weed that is a very common weed that grows all over cities, and especially New York City, Newark, Jersey City. And so that's the plant that I studied. And I was able to kind of, and so why? You might be thinking to yourself, why would anyone care about plants in the city, right? There's not that many plants in the city. Why would we care? Well, because I'll let you know, I'm assuming many of you live either in a city or very close to a big city, right? If you're attending Rutgers Newark. So just so you know, plants are actually really important to cities because they provide us a lot of different services. They provide us better air quality. They help us mitigate noise, which means reduce noise. They help support the biodiversity of other taxa, which is just a fancy way of saying they help things other than plants. They help things like insects. They help things like birds live in cities. They also prevent soil erosion with their roots. They provide cooling effects. So shade, for example, or sometimes water vapor is released from plants. It provides cooling effect. And they also play a pivotal role in nutrient cycling. So they can take CO2 gas out of the air and then use sunlight and water to turn that into sugar, which is really cool. All right, so this is just a little bit background of plants in cities. You know, cities are basically, you might have heard the term like concrete jungle, right? And that's because in cities, there is a lot of paved surface. And the fancy way to say that is impervious surface. So surface that water cannot go into, like a street, a sidewalk, buildings, things like that. And so this is a map of our region, right? Newark, New York area. And if we put a land cover layer on top of that with red showing you very high proportion of impervious surface, you can see how much impervious surface there is towards the urban core. And so that's going to affect how plants can grow, and you'll end up with this type of situation, like for example, street tree pits, where plants are constantly being droughted or flooded. And over time, this can affect the evolution of plants in cities. Another thing that we have in our region is de-icing salt, right? So it's hot now, but just a few months ago it wasn't, or even maybe a month ago, it wasn't too hot. And you may have seen this on the sidewalk, right? Like a bunch of salt. So this is a long way to just say there are things that are happening inside of cities that can affect plants in general and even their evolution. And so that's what I studied when I was at Rutgers Newark, and I am very proud to say that I finished my doctorate in May of 2020. Yes, ma'am. During a pandemic, I had to move my entire lab to my Brooklyn apartment. It was, you know, a very challenging time for everyone. I know you all had your challenges as well, in addition to, you know, work and life, you know, dealing with the other complications of the pandemic. So, but I was super proud. And unfortunately, I didn't get to have a celebration, like I didn't get to walk or anything like that. So I did this super dorky thing and put on my garb and went on a stand-up paddleboard, which is like total dorky activity, but I also didn't fall in. And so I was very proud of that as well. So yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Where do I live now? Well, right now I'm actually in Florida, believe it or not. My husband just moved to Florida and I helped him move. So I'm actually here right now. I fly back to where I normally live for the time being, which is Michigan. So I live in Michigan right now. I am a postdoctoral researcher at Michigan State University during my day job. And so there I'm continuing my work with the same plant, and it's very different there than in New York City, but it's very beautiful. And actually the city that I live in is still very diverse, which I was a little worried about moving to the Midwest, but where I am at, which is Lansing, it is still very diverse. So I'm happy about that. Yes. Okay. Enough about me. Enough about me. What the heck are we going to do today? We're just going to talk about the syllabus, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of an intro into the course and talk about why plants are important. So we covered that a little bit about why plants are important in urban areas, but they're important in other ways too. We'll also talk a little bit about life on Earth and how we name plants, which is a type of classification. So I will say, well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. So let's go forward. First, we'll talk about the syllabus. And for anyone who joined us late, just know if you have a question, feel free to write in the chat box at any time, either the question or just the word question, and then we can unmute. So if you have any question, please feel free to stop me, because otherwise I'll just barrel ahead. Okay, so the syllabus is available on Canvas. So actually what I'll do, I'll show you guys real quick. I have it here. I think it's still pulled up. Let's just make sure I don't have to log in again. Yeah, good. Okay, so I'm gonna just show you guys real quick the Canvas page, which you obviously found because you were able to get the Zoom information. But just to get you oriented, so if you were to log into our class Canvas page right now, this is the Canvas page that's just for the lecture. And I will talk about the lecture versus the lab in a second. But just so you know, for this Canvas page, this is our lecture Canvas page. If you go to announcements, this is where I'm going to provide links for anything that you'll need for the class. So for example, in this first message that I posted a few days ago, I gave you the link for the Zoom, which you all found because you're here in the Zoom today, and the link to the syllabus. So if you were to click this link down here, syllabus, that will take you to a place where you can download the syllabus. After we have class, I will post lecture recordings and the slides also in this announcements area. So that's where all of that will be. Later today, after this class, the lecture slides. So here's already the lecture slides for lecture 1. And they are set up like a discussion, but so we'll get there in a second. I'll stop that for now, but just to give you a little bit of orientation of what the Canvas page will have on it. All right, so, yep, go back here. Great. So hopefully you can see the PowerPoint slides again. Let me know if you can't. Okay, so basic plant science lecture. The way that the way that basic plant science works at Rutgers Newark is the lecture and the lab are completely different entities, as it were. There's going to be some overlap in content, but if you're enrolled in the lecture, you do not have to be also enrolled in the lab to get credit for the lecture. Likewise, sometimes people are only enrolled in the lab and they don't have to be in the lecture to get lab credit. So the lecture is worth 3 credits and the lab is worth 1 credit. I do the lecture, and then Dr. Fonseca, who you'll meet tomorrow, she runs the lab. But we coordinate the content together because I used to run the lab. But now I teach the lecture part. For the lecture, like I said, here's my email address again. I am available for office hours. I don't put a set time here because I know that you guys all work jobs and you have families. And so rather than have a time, if you want to meet for office hours for any reason, send me an email and I'll send you a link to select a time. Our course, obviously, for lecture, we meet virtually Monday and Wednesdays from 6 to 9:45. So I will just say right now, we'll never be here until 9:45, ever. Because of the lecture being virtual, I'm able to get through content much more quickly than that. So usually class will probably last until about 7:20, maybe 7:30. It depends. If it's a live lecture, I may opt to take a break and give you a break as well. But we'll never go this long. It will always be about, 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock for a couple of the longer ones. Just so you know. That being said, so I'm not going to go through the whole syllabus today because the syllabus is available for you to read on Canvas, and you should read it because there's information there that is important to you to know. But I'll go through a few of the things here. So one thing to mention is that summer session moves mad fast. I mean, it's literally like a month, and we have to cover a lot of content. So I'm just saying it today, day one of the class, keep up with it. It's very hard to make up for lost time if you fall asleep at the wheel. So stay on it. The recordings will be on YouTube for you to watch if you miss something. The slides will be on Canvas. So stay up to date with the class because it's over before you even know it. The lecture is held online. And okay, got a question. Oh, it's a direct message. Will you send me an email about that conflict? Okay. All right. So lecture is held online. Some sessions like today will be live, where I'll be here and I'll be going through the material with you. Some of the sessions will be pre-recorded. And so there will be a link to basically pull up the lecture and watch me give you the lecture. All right. Some in my experience, because I've taught this class, I've taught different classes at Rutgers Newark, all plant related, some of them in person, some of them virtual, and some of them hybrid. And I will say that for the virtual classes that I've taught, students have told me they really like the pre-recorded lectures because they can pause and take breaks and move at their own pace. So you'll have to tell me how you feel about the live versus pre-recorded sessions as we go through the class. Attendance and participation is worth 10% of the grade. Again, this is all on the syllabus. For the live sessions, I do record attendance and I do add that towards your grade. And you can get a participation points by writing in the chat box or by even just speaking out. For the recorded sessions, I want you guys to write questions or comments in the discussion threads. So this is where I stopped on Canvas, and I will go back there again to show you what I mean by that. So for example, hopefully you can see Canvas again. So here, so let's say you're in the basic plant science lecture. And I would have posted something here in announcements. Here's the pre-recording for today's lecture, right? Something like that. Then the lecture slides will be available in the discussions section. And you see what it says here, review the slides from lecture and place questions and comments here to get participation points. So you can also add questions and comments here to get participation points for the live lectures as well. But for the pre-recorded lectures, this is where you're gonna wanna go. And so you could literally be like, hi, this class was very interesting. I learned about it or something, right? Post reply. But you could also ask specific questions about things that you are confused about. And you guys can reply and like each other's questions and answers. All right. Email me or let me know if that's confusing in any way. Okay. I think as you use it, it'll be a little bit more straightforward. Okay, that's where we left off. And hopefully you can see the lecture slides again. All right. For missing class, or if you miss a quiz or an exam, so you have to provide documentation. And this could be like, oh, my boss like made me work late or something, and whatever the documentation is, provide me documentation so that I can excuse your absence and allow you to make up a quiz or an exam. I will say for the quiz and exam stuff, if you know ahead of time that you're going to have a conflict, right? If it's not like a medical emergency, but some other type of conflict, please let me know ahead of time so I can anticipate that. There will be a lot of homework quizzes in this class to make sure you guys keep up with the content, and you want to turn those in on time. So if you submit a quiz late, it'll be automatically dropped a letter grade. And if you submit a quiz late without any sort of documentation, more than a day late, I don't give you credit for that. That's because, again, this course lasts literally like a month. So we have to stay on top of it. How's your grade determined in lecture? So the grade breakdowns are above there. So you see like an A is anything 89.5 and above, etc. The homework quizzes will make up the bulk of your lecture grade. So there'll be a quiz after every lecture. And then there are 2 exams. Oh, there's a question I have here, direct message. Do you give multiple attempts for the quiz? No, I don't give multiple attempts for the quiz, but the quizzes have no time limit, and they're open for a while after the lecture so that you can review the material before doing the quiz. So you'll be able to like look at your notes, look at the lecture slides, all those things while you do the quiz, and the quizzes don't have any time limit. Okay, so yeah, the quizzes make up the bulk of your grade, followed by 2 exams, each worth 20%, and then the attendance and participation. So as I said before, just please work hard now. I know you guys are busy. I'm busy too. So please, let's work hard together. I promise I'll work hard for you. I promise. So please work hard for me too, so that we can have a really fun and efficient semester and you guys can get the most out of our time together. There's no extra credit given in this course, but sometimes I do add additional like fun assignments to boost your grade. The other thing is to just please be respectful to each other, especially for those of you who are in the lab. You know, be respectful to your fellow students and me, and also your lab instructor if you're in the lab. Okay, yes, work hard now, starting now. Starting now, work hard, okay? And this is the whole semester. This is it. This is the entire semester. It moves so fast. So yeah, so today, right, today is 6-1. We're running through the importance of plants and life on Earth and these kind of things. This is, you could see on the side here, it says chapters. So you do not have to read all of those, all the pages of those chapters, but I'm telling you where in the book you can get information to help you understand something a little bit better if you don't understand it only from me talking about it, right? So that's what those chapter numbers refer to. Another thing I would recommend is once you do get the book, and I guess I didn't, did I not? No, I didn't say the book. All right. The book is on the syllabus in Canvas. Please get the cheapest version of the book you can. It's Stern's Introduction to Plant Biology. Any edition is fine. Old editions are fine. So I want you to spend the least amount of money you can on this book. And if anyone's having financial difficulty in getting the book, reach out to me and I might be able to assist some students in that way, okay? Send me an email. Yeah, so the semester moves mad quick. We have 2 lecture exams. These are dates, so 6/20 and 7/6. These are dates that you're going to want to note in your calendars now, right? So that you are aware of those exams. If you are ordering the book and it's not going to be arriving for a week or so, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm more concerned that you get the cheapest version of the book that you can. Any edition. So make note of these lecture exams in your calendar. And this is what I was talking about. So if you look here, there's a total of 8 lectures, including today, right? Including today. So I have some questions here. What times will the lectures, I'm assuming Crystal means what time will the lecture exams start? Usually I give a window for that as well, similar to how the quizzes run. So on the next page, no, I got you. I'll go through on the next page where I talk about the quizzes. It's similar to how the exams will run as well. They will be available during a window, but that window will begin during lecture time. Yep, and then are the exams based on the textbook or lecture slides or both? So I do my best to give you the information you need to know in the lecture. I do my very best. But sometimes I might present something in lecture, and for some students, they'll be like, oh yeah, like she said this and this makes this thing. Oh, that makes sense to me. And then for other students, it may not be enough information. They may need more details to fully understand what's going on. And so if you're able to understand what's going on just based on me in the lecture, then you may not find yourself using the book that much. But particularly for those of you who are in lab as well, the book's going to be a really good resource for you in the lab. For example, the glossary of the book, the index of the book. There's a lot of diagrams in the book that the lab refers to. So yeah. But yeah, I try my best in lecture to give you everything you need. All right. So this is the quiz things I was talking about. So how many questions will be on the exam? I don't know. So here, for example, look, so today we are, I'll annotate. You'll all learn that I love to annotate and I am pretty bad at it. All right, so look here's today, right? Wednesday the 1st. And there will be a quiz on today's lecture that will be available starting at 9 p.m. tonight. And you'll have days to do it, right? You'll have days to do it. It's due on Friday before midnight. And all of the quizzes have that kind of stagger. Quizzes for Monday lectures are always due Wednesday before class. Quizzes for Wednesday lectures are always due on Friday before midnight. So you have a couple days to do it. So there's no excuse for not turning it in on time, right? No excuse. Turn it in on time. Turn it on time. The quizzes are not meant to be difficult. The quizzes are to show me that you attended lecture or you watched the recording, you made notes, and you maybe like kind of took a second to think about what the content is. They are definitely not meant to be difficult. They're meant to be easy. That's why the bulk of your grade is from these quizzes, because these quizzes are meant to be easy if you pay attention and do them on time. Question, are the quizzes short and questions are multiple choice? They're pretty much always, I'd say 90% of them are multiple choice or matching or fill in the blank. Yeah, mostly they're that. Every now and then there might be something that you have to write, like a sentence. Do the quizzes and lecture exam grades automatically? Will we be able to see our grade right away? So I think the way that it's set up right now in Canvas is it will grade it automatically. I will say though that sometimes even with my best efforts, Canvas makes mistakes or Canvas marks something wrong that I wouldn't have marked wrong. So yes, Canvas does grade them automatically. Is that necessarily the final grade? No, because I will go into everybody's graded Canvas quiz and exam to look for errors. I would also encourage you, if you think Canvas marked you wrong on something, to send me an email so I could fix it. Can you pass the quizzes with just the lecture recording and the lecture slides, or will you need the text as well? I think I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's going to depend on the student. I personally liked having, I took a course like this at Rutgers during grad school, and I personally liked having the textbook. So yeah. Okay, so can we start the quiz and save it to complete later before the due date pass? I don't think so, Baba, I don't think so. I think once you start the quiz, you've got to finish it. Each quiz is only going to have about maybe 15-ish questions, 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 questions that are not meant to be difficult. So if you start the quiz, you'll have to complete the quiz in one sitting, but there's no time limit. How do we get credit for attendance? That's outlined in the syllabus, but if you basically, for the live lectures, like tonight, I'll use your attendance. And for the pre-recorded lectures, you will write in the discussion board threads. Can you use the 14th edition? Use any edition of the textbook. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Crystal. Crystal answered the attendance credit thing. Okay, we're going to move on now because we want to keep going through this stuff. So yeah, so note that there's a quiz after every single lecture. Thank you, Crystal. Yeah, quiz after every single lecture. Okay, so don't be surprised. I'm telling you. Yeah, these are meant to boost your grade. In the past, when this course was taught, the entire grade for students was based on exams. I think that's not a good way. The quizzes help you learn the material. The quizzes will get you ready for exams. Oh yeah, Sharonda, can you send me that in an email? Yeah, Sharonda, please send me that in an email so I can think about that. Thanks. All right. So yeah, so please do the quizzes. They're for you to get better at the course material and to give you credit so you can have a good grade in the class. All right. Lab, I'm not going to talk too much about because a lot of you are not in the lab. I will say though, the reason why the lab number is such a small number of students is because of classroom size. Lab beats in person, and so there's a limited amount of seats, and so that's why lab is limited, and I apologize for that. I wish I could do something about that, but unfortunately I cannot. If you are in the lab, you're going to be meeting in person in Boyden. You're going to be meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays starting at 6. Dr. Fonseca is the lab instructor. She's great. I've worked with her for many classes now. And likewise, there will be a Canvas page for lab. You've probably already have access to it because she made it available last week. And likewise, the lab will never go till 9:30 most likely. It's always, you can get in and do the lab efficiently, particularly if you come to lab prepared, having read the manual. So there will be no manual to purchase for lab. We provide you the lab manual, and I believe that Dr. Fonseca has already made that available on the lab Canvas page. Another question about the quiz. Does the quiz have sentence questions or multiple choice? Yeah, so as I said earlier, most of them are, 90% of the quizzes are multiple choice, fill in the blank, matching. There may be one question per quiz that you have to maybe write a sentence, but it's not that. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry for those of you who wanted to get into the lab and were not able to. I'm sorry. I really do wish I could do something about it. Yeah, so I'm very sorry, even though I know it doesn't help. Yeah, so you guys will talk about lab tomorrow in lab. Okay. Oh yeah, here we go. This is the book. I knew I mentioned it somewhere. So here's the book. You can get any edition. Just don't spend too much money. And I will look into if there is a PDF version that I become aware of, I will make that available if I can. I've got to kind of read over things to make sure that it's okay. Yeah, and also just don't cheat. Please don't cheat. You're not allowed to cheat. You're not allowed in university integrity, you're not allowed to cheat. As an instructor, if myself or Dr. Fonseca is thinking that you're cheating, we're supposed to inform these offices. If you don't know what cheating is, there are links here that you can learn more about what cheating is. But don't cheat. This isn't particularly in lecture. It may not come into play as much because obviously the exams are online, the quizzes are online, and I assume you're going to be using supplemental material like your notes or the slides because I'm not in your house and I can't really control that, right? However, don't let that make you lazy in a in-person situation, right? In the lab, when you have lab exams, you're not going to have that at your disposal, right? You're going to have to just do the exam. So, yeah. So don't cheat. Don't cheat. There might be a McGraw version of the book, but we don't use it. Like we don't use the McGraw questions in this class. Okay. All right, enough. So that's enough about the lecture syllabus, right? You can read the full syllabus on Canvas, and please do so. Please do so. That should be your first thing that you do. But now let's talk about plants. That's why we're here, right? You love plants. Maybe you don't love plants. I love plants. And my goal at the end of this semester is to have you maybe not be in love with them, but maybe at least appreciate how important they are to you and to all of us and to the world in general. So they're pretty cool things. And I'm going to do my best to get you excited about them this semester. So why are plants so important? Why do we even care, right, about plants? What do they do for us? What is the point of plants? Well, there's a lot of reasons that they're important. Oops, the one thing that oxygen, food, look nice. Yup. So yeah, jumping ahead, but totally cool. So yeah, if you like breathing oxygen, like thanks plants, because they make it for us. Most of the things you eat are actually parts of plants, or if you eat animals, we feed those animals plants. So we wouldn't have animals without having the plants. They do look nice. They're good for our homes and our communities. It's soothing to go out and be around plants. In more biological terms, so one thing that they do that's super important is something I mentioned earlier, that they provide what's called carbon fixation for the entire biosphere. And so we'll talk about biosphere in a few slides, but carbon fixation meaning they take carbon dioxide out of the air and use it to make sugar, which is a really big deal. Yep. People are writing here. Haley's writing medicine and food. Stephanie is writing paper. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that plants do that you guys already even know, which is great. But yeah, so with this whole carbon fixation thing, right? Plants are absorbing CO2 gas from the air and turning that or converting that into, let's see what's good. I'll use red. See, converting CO2 gas into sugar, starch, amino acids, and fatty acids. And so look, that's what's happening here, right? Here's carbon dioxide or CO2. It's the same thing. Carbon dioxide is the same thing as CO2. And the plant is absorbing the carbon dioxide. The sunlight is going to shine on the leaves. Water is going to go up through the roots. And via this process that we'll learn about later, another class, a process called photosynthesis, the plant takes those things, takes all of this stuff, undergoes photosynthesis, and whammo, you get oxygen and sugar. Oxygen that we breathe and sugar that we eat, and also that the plant uses for its own energy purposes. Okay, so oxygen is actually a waste product of photosynthesis. Oxygen is like garbage for the plant. Well, for this instance, it uses it in other things, but oxygen is what we breathe. right? What we breathe. So plant life, so if you think of Earth and all of the living organisms that are on Earth, if you were to weigh all of those organisms, right, able to put every organism that lived on Earth and put it on a scale, you would see that plants make up more than 98% of all of the total biomass on Earth. So they're a major component of living organisms on Earth. And as I just said, via photosynthesis, they can take CO2 using energy from the sun and water and make glucose, which provides food for all of us, and oxygen. And it's estimated that if plants were to go off of the Earth, that we would not have any oxygen on Earth in about 11 years. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of like the big picture of why plants are important, right? Like the biggest, yeah. Oh, I like this. 90s babies learned all about photosynthesis from SpongeBob. I love me some SpongeBob. SpongeBob is actually, yeah, awesome. Wow, man, that's funny. Yeah, I used to literally watch SpongeBob. This is kind of embarrassing, but like for grad school, sometimes I'd have a really hard day ahead of me. And so when I would be eating cereal before heading to campus, I would sometimes do that while watching SpongeBob. Good way to start the day. All right. So that's kind of the big picture. Now let's talk about why plants are important specifically for humans, because you're a human, I'm a human. And so we care about things that are important to us because we're humans. So plants make up 90% of our food. That's a lot. That's a lot of food. And actually, because of plants and the domestication of plants, we humans were able to build some civilizations as we know it. So about 10,000 years, give or take, in many different places on Earth, humans were independently learning how to cultivate plants and grow them. So like farming. And this allowed us to build civilizations. Let's see. So for example, this is just 3 examples, but there are more, but we're only going to talk about 3. Corn in Central America, and then you have wheat and barley in the Middle East, and then rice in Asia. These were plant crops that allowed people to actually build civilizations around 10,000 years ago, give or take. And interestingly, at least from my botanical perspective, these 3 things I've highlighted here, corn, wheat, and rice, are actually all types of grass, believe it or not. And these are actually the fruits of the grass. Yes, grass has fruit. Okay, you already just learned something. Grass has fruit. Corn is a grass. Sorry. Rice is a grass. Wheat is a grass. So that's kind of cool. All right, so food is important for humans. Another thing we use them for is fuel. So this is all types of fuel you can think of. From your more traditional, simpler fuels like cooking with a wood fire, right? Or heating your home with wood. My parents live in Connecticut and they have wood stoves and they still heat their house using wood that is from the forest that they burn, right? Maybe you know somebody who does that. But also fossil fuels. So when you think of coal and oil and natural gas, and you hear the word fossil fuels, especially for you 90s kids with Jurassic Park, right? You think dinosaur stuff, right? If you hear coal, oil, natural gas, you think, oh yeah, that's from dinosaurs. Okay, sure, there's some dinosaurs in there, but mostly it's from prehistoric plants, because as we mentioned before, plants even now make 98% of all the biomass of all the living things. And over evolutionary time, even when dinosaurs were around, same thing. It's always been way more plants than animals. So here's what I mean by that. So here's a prehistoric forest, right? Let's say this is, oh, I don't know, 200 million years ago, right? And here's this prehistoric forest, and these plants die and then go into the ground. And over a long time, and with more and more dead plants falling on top and adding this pressure, you end up with heat, and you take this dead plant material into turning it into something like coal. Same kind of process happens for natural gas and oil. But yeah, so the reason I mentioned that is because all of the coal, oil, natural gas that exists right now is due to plants that died like hundreds of millions of years ago. So if we use it all up, it can't be replaced. Well, it can in like another 100, 200 million years. So that's just something to keep in mind. You know, they're fossil fuels because they're from ancient dead. It took a long time to get them. So we want to use them smartly. But then also now here's another more modern type thing is biodiesel. So for example, corn is used a lot to make gas. And like, trust me, it is not as pretty as this little picture here tries to make it seem. It's still a very, it still involves a lot of manufacturing and a lot of chemical. Yeah, it's not like pretty leaves coming out of the gas tank. Yeah, but so important of plants to humans: food for humans, fuel for humans, shelter for humans. So maybe you've done repairs on a house before, or are involved in construction, and maybe you know that wood is a major component of a lot of roofs, right? But it's not just shelter like that. It's also things like clothing, you know, cotton, linen, hemp, jute, bamboo. All of these things are types of textiles that come from plants. Obviously construction, right? Using wood, or even more traditional homes that use grass and palms. I'm getting some direct messages here that are people are getting excited about plants. That makes me very exciting. And then paper, as was mentioned earlier in the chat box, right? Most of the all the paper that we use comes from plants. By the way, a lot of toilet paper comes from pine trees. I know that seems really weird, but they're able to make that like real soft fiber stuff. Yeah, that comes from pine trees. Okay, moving on. And somebody mentioned in the chat box, medicine. Yes, so plants are also used to make medicines for humans. In this example, this plant here, quinine, is able to make an anti-fever agent that can treat malaria, which is super cool to do. Malaria is a very big problem in a lot of Africa still to this day. My sister-in-law lives in Mozambique, and so I know from her, like it's a big concern that she has to worry about. So it's good that we have a plant. Yeah, see, another person in direct messaging me saying in their country as well. And then this one, the Madagascar Periwinkle, is actually used to do cancer treatments for different types of cancers. So these are just a couple examples. So let's sum it all up. Why are plants important? They provide carbon fixation. So they take CO2 gas from the air and make sugar and oxygen, right? That's carbon fixation. We eat them. They are the basis of the terrestrial. Terrestrial just means organisms that live on the ground, right? As versus in the sea. But they're the basis of the terrestrial food chain. I already mentioned the oxygen thing. They have allowed humans to build civilizations. They give us sources of fuel via fossil fuels and just using dead plants, shelter and clothing and other goods, medicine, and more things that we don't even have time to talk about today because we just don't. But plants are super cool and important. So it's important that we kind of get to know them. I mentioned earlier about this idea of biosphere, and I said I would talk about it later. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit now, and just kind of like life on Earth. So we just figured out why plants are important. But now let's talk about life on Earth more generally. So on Earth, there is places that things can live. Places that things can live. And all of those places that things can live are called the biosphere. So sphere refers to circle, and bio refers to living. So the biosphere is the living part on the circle that is Earth, right? On the circle that is Earth. And so the parts of the biosphere are, let's start at the bottom here. So look, so see the whole yellow, this whole yellow circle, told you I'm bad at annotating. The whole yellow circle is the biosphere. See, biosphere, the whole yellow circle. But inside of that yellow circle are different parts that support life. So we have the hydrosphere, which is your oceans, your lakes, your ponds, your frozen ice caps, your glaciers, all of those things are part of the hydrosphere. You have the lithosphere, which are the rocks. You have the ecosphere, which is everything on land. And you have the atmosphere. And the atmosphere of these things, the atmosphere is probably the one that you've heard mentioned. But all of those things are parts of the biosphere. And that's where things live on Earth, right? So where does a fish live? A fish lives in the hydrosphere, right? Where does a plant live? Well, a plant can live in the ecosphere and in the hydrosphere and in the so it'll depend on who you're talking about. Where does a human live? A human lives in the ecosphere, right? Although I guess if you're in an airplane, atmosphere, no, that gets too complicated. All right. Oops. So now that we talked about the biosphere, so the biosphere itself, though, so don't get confused on this. So these things here, hydrosphere, ecosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, those are parts of the biosphere. But the life that lives in this biosphere, the life, is divided into 3 domains. So don't get it twisted. Atmosphere, ecosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere are locations in the biosphere. But the living things in those locations we call domains. And the 3 total domains of living things, there are bacteria and archaea, which are your prokaryotic microorganisms. So things that are like single-celled. We won't cover them. Oh, yeah, so we have, how are the ecosphere and lithosphere different from each other? Right. So above and below ground, right? So the ecosphere is the surface of a ground, right? So like where most plants live, where we walk. Lithosphere is under the surface. So like the rocks. And thanks, Maha, for saying that it's above and below ground. Yep, no problem. So we don't talk about bacteria and archaea in this class. We don't talk about those 2 domains, but we do talk about the domain eukarya. And I always say it's because eukarya, it helps my students remember that word. But yeah, domain eukarya, because eukarya, we will talk about. So those are your eukaryotic organisms or multiple celled organisms. So in the domain eukarya, there are kingdoms. And so one kingdom are the protists, right? These are things like algae, slime molds, water mold. There's a kingdom of fungi, right? Mushrooms and fungus. There's an animal kingdom. Oh, look, animals, right? They got eyes. Some of them are fuzzy. Oh, cute, scary, maybe, depending on who you're looking at, right? We as humans, we're part of that animal kingdom in the domain eukarya. But then there are plants, the plant kingdom. So the plant kingdom in the domain eukarya. And so everything we talk about in our class will pretty much be in the plant kingdom. Although we will talk a little bit about animals, a little about fungi as they relate to having relationships with plants. Okie doke. On Earth, there's almost 400,000 species of plants that are currently known, give or take, right? And the majority of those, 94% of those, are what are known as flowering plants. So plants that make flowers. But every year we discover new species, and every year some species go extinct. If you're interested in plants that were recently discovered, you can go to this link and it will show you some examples of plants that were discovered in 2018. So yeah, each year we discover about 2,000 species that are new to science. In terms of an estimate of how many go extinct every year, it's a little bit harder because some are going to go extinct that never were discovered too. So, but there are estimates of that as well. Speaking of extinction, oh, bummer. Speaking of extinction, right now plants are at risk, and actually we're a little also at risk. So scientists say that we are currently in what's known as the Anthropocene. And maybe you've heard the word anthropology before, right? Anthropology. So anthro refers to humans, anthro. And then pocene refers to like an epoch of time. So right now we are in the Anthropocene, or the epoch of time of the humans. And because of that, well, Pocene means, all right, so hold on. I'll stop the Anthropocene thing for a second. So are these discovered plants new plants, or have they been there and were just never discovered? Right, good question, Crystal. So I should be clear before I go through this whole plants at risk thing. I should be clear that so there are plants on Earth, and there are humans who try to find plants and name them and describe them. And so when I say here, new species are discovered every year, what I mean is that new species are described by scientists every year. Now that might be because it has never ever been found ever before by any human. And a scientist happens to be doing a study and they happen to come across this plant and they are the first person who ever came across it, right? That could be. And then that would still be a new species, a species new to science. However, many times plants that are described or discovered, meaning new to science, have been known by people, particularly indigenous people. And so there's also that kind of thing to keep in mind. Sometimes a plant may be new, meaning discovered and new to the world at large, right? But that plant may have been known about and used by people for a long time, right? So it's important to be clear about those kind of things. Pocene means what? Pocene means kind of like the age of. Yeah, the age of. So you can think of Anthropocene as the age of humans, right? The age of humans. Because humans haven't been around that long. And because of humans, plants are at risk because we're having some really high extinction rates for plants. We're having the highest extinction rate right now based on all that we can tell since the last major extinction event, which was 65 million years ago, which was the dinosaur extinction event. So you notice here, though, there's been multiple extinction events on Earth. The Anthropocene just corresponds with the 6th one. So there's been at least 6 mass extinction events on Earth. The 5th one would have been the one for the dinosaurs. So So extinction events on Earth are nothing new. Extinction events have happened at least 6 times. However, this one we're a little more concerned about because we're here living on Earth. And yeah, so things that go extinct now, including us maybe, it's better to kind of, we care more about it now than like when the dinosaurs went extinct, because we weren't there. But yeah, there's a lot of studies that look at extinction events. There was this one study in particular that looked at 13,000 species of plants and found that 70% of those 13,000 are threatened with extinction. And if you want to learn more about this in detail, there's a really great, it's kind of like a pamphlet / magazine that is offered via Kew Gardens and their partners, State of the World's Plants and Fungi. And the last version, I think, came out in 2020. And there is a link here if you want to read more about that, goes into some of this in detail. And 99% of all currently threatened species are at risk from human activity. And human activity means a lot of different things. So Omar here is, but why are we in threat of extinction? So depending on where you live and depending on what financial means you have, you may not be. So when I say extinction, I mean a species extinction. So like humans in general, we're probably okay for the time being as a species, but there are going to be people, depending on where you live, that are going to be having a harder time. For example, right now out in California and the west of the US, we're dealing with, once again, a really bad drought, right? It's a really big problem because we grow a lot of our agriculture out there and you need water for that. And so things like that. But no, for humans are good for now. We'll be around for a while. Can we predict these extinction? Geetika said, can we predict these extinction events for ourselves or more intellectual creatures? Yes, no. I mean, all we can do as scientists is get data from the world around us and analyze that data, and to the best of our ability, draw conclusions from that data. So when you keep gathering certain types of data and it keeps producing the same result, that makes it be more clear that something is happening as versus like, a one-off. Yeah, hopefully, right, Asmar? And then, yeah, so Crystal mentions climate change and global warming. Those are definitely things that are impacting life on Earth, but they are not the only things, which we'll talk about. So those are two examples. Those are two examples of this thing at the bottom here, risk from human activity. So climate change, global warming, those are some of the risks of human activity, but they're not the only ones. And then, would nuclear war kill all life on Earth? So I'm a botanist, but I will say that no, but what would be left is very small things. Actually, some plants would do fine if there was that to occur. We'll talk about them in a future class. I'm going to move forward here now. So just so you guys have an idea, when I say human activity, you probably do immediately think of climate change, global warming, but I'm also just talking about activity in general, because increase of population. I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly. Is it, can you unmute and let me know how to say your name? Is it Zikia? Well, I will get that pronunciation at some point, but yes, increase of population is definitely what I'm talking about when it comes to human activity. So this is.
Did you call me Professor Panko?
I just wanted to make sure I was saying your name correctly. How do you say your name?
Zakia.
Zakia. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So increase of population is when you have that many more humans, their activities impact way more things. So look here. So in about 6,000 BC, we estimate there was probably around 20 million humans on Earth. If you look fast forward to 1750, you're already at 50 million humans. 100 years later, 1 billion humans. 70 years later, 2 billion humans. Less than 100 years later, 7 billion humans. And in May 2018, we were up to 7.6 billion humans, right? So humans need things. Humans need places to live. Humans need food. Humans need water. Humans have cars. Humans need roads. Humans need copper and nickel and lead and other metals that are inside of the earth. And so when there be more and more and more and more humans, more agricultural activity, more mining activity, more urban activity, right? Cities growing in size, new cities showing up. And all of these activities have implications to things that are not humans, right? They have implications to humans too, but yeah. So here are some of those things. When I said here, 99% of currently threatened species are at risk from human activity. These are the activities I'm kind of talking about. So in terms of plants, this is specifically about plants. Look, threats that are putting plants at risk. So this is just plants. The things that are the major risk factors for plants are surprising, it might be a little surprising to you. So look at this big piece here. 32%, almost 33% of plants at risk are at risk because of practices of agriculture and aquaculture, right? So that might be surprising to you, but as I mentioned, making food for so many humans requires a lot of land, and you can't grow corn or rice or something on a forest. You have to get rid of that forest in order to make fields for crops. Look at this, 21% is because of biological resource use. What does that even mean, right? Well, biological resource use means things like cutting down pine trees for toilet paper, right? You're taking a tree and turning it into toilet paper, or you're taking trees and turning them into a house, right? So that's what that means, resource use. Natural system modifications. This could deal with that kind of an urban thing I was talking about. You know, if a city gets bigger, you have to modify the natural systems, the natural ecosystems around that. So anyways, now are things like pollution and climate change impacting plants and putting plants at risk? Yes, but for plants, it's actually these other human activities that are much more bad for them, right? Particularly agriculture. And this is what I show this to you because obviously we need food. Humans need food. So this is not a simple thing to fix. You know, it's like we need agriculture to feed ourselves, but that's also not sustainable. The way we do it is not sustainable over time. So we have to start thinking about these things so we can, so that everything can do well. Because we need plants as much as, we need plants more than they need us. Let's put it that way. Okay, plants need our help. It's important to appreciate plants. It's important to advocate for sustainable practices and conservation efforts. If you're interested in learning more about that, I'm happy to talk about that. But this is my main soapbox moment about that because I study plants, especially, you know, urban systems, and just, it's all connected. Everything on Earth is connected to each other. Okay, but here are some ways that we might be able to help plants. So we need to think about our agricultural practices and maybe modify some of those. We need to consider how pollutants spread and maybe consider using things that are doing practices that produce less pollutants or treating things that are polluted to make them harmless. recycle, but that's also tricky because I don't know if you heard over the last few years, but basically people don't want to recycle anymore because it's too expensive and there's no real place to do it. In fact, you know, like New York City, all of its recycled garbage used to get sold to other countries and sometimes even go down to North Carolina. So it's complicated. But yeah, conserve water, conserve energy. Yeah, it's my soapbox moment. Okay, let's see how we're doing on time. 7-Eleven. Okay, good. So this is the last thing that we're going to talk about today. Let me just see if there's anything Right, I think I covered, I think pretty much everything in here I have covered that's in the chat box. Okay, so I said that there's almost 400,000 species of plants on Earth, right? And since there's 400-ish thousand, they have to all have specific names. You can't just have like, oh, the pink flower plant or the like dark green leaf plant, right? Or the Atlanta plant or the China plant. We need more, we need more names. And so we have a specific way that we name organisms, not just plants, but we'll talk about it and how it relates to plants today. So plant names and classification. So remember I said in the biosphere, there is living domains and that plants are in the domain Eukarya, right? Just like animals are in the domain Eukarya. But if you were to look just at the plant kingdom, there are major divisions of plants. So like these are different types of plants that occur in the plant kingdom. And we will learn about those as we go through the course over the semester. So they're the non-vascular plants, which are mosses, liverworts, and hornworts. And then there are vascular plants. In the vascular plants, you have plants that shed spores, and you have plants that shed seeds. And once you get to the seed shedding plants, you have plants that make flowers and plants that don't make flowers. And we will cover all of these in subsequent classes. I'm just showing you that inside of the plant kingdom, there's a lot of different types of plants, but we name them all the same way. And so we have this thing that's called biological taxonomy, which is the science of naming organisms. So just because I like to break down these types of words. So taxon, it kind of means like a name. And onomy is like, so this is the science of naming things, basically, and particularly naming things that as they relate to biology. So we already talked about this word, domain, right? Domain Eukarya, right? And if we were talking about animals, we would say the animal kingdom, but we're talking about plants, so we'll say the plant kingdom. And then from that, further down, there are other components: phylum, class, order, family, genus, and then finally species. So let's do an example with humans, with human beings. Thanks for letting me know, Baba. Yeah, so this is an example with human beings. Human beings are in the domain Eukarya. We're in the animal kingdom, right? Kingdom Animalia. We are in the phylum Chordata because human beings have a spinal cord, so Chordata. We're in the class Mammalia because we are mammals, right? We're warm-blooded, we produce milk, we produce hair, we're mammals. Humans are in the order primates, and we are in the family Hominidae. You don't need to know those words, but I'm just showing you how we organize the name. We are in the genus Homo, and our species name is Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens. Every human on Earth is a Homo sapiens, every single one, all the same species. And you might notice that you might notice the species name has two words, Homo and sapiens. And you might also notice that the first word in the species name is the same word as the genus name. And that will always be the case. It doesn't matter what organism you're talking about. First word of the species name is always the same as the genus name. So that can be handy to know. Just for a few stylistic things, if you wanted to say many, so phylum is singular, phyla is plural. So for example, many domains, many kingdoms, many phyla, not phylums, many phyla. Likewise, you don't say genuses, you say genera. So genera is the plural of genus and phyla is the plural of phylum. I mention this because you will see these words and I don't want you to get confused. Okay, so that was an example with humans, right? Homo sapiens. So let's do an example with the Madagascar periwinkle that cures cancer, right? Or is one of the cancer cures. So just like us, it's in the domain Eukarya, but it's a plant. So it's in the plant kingdom, right? Kingdom Plantae. And this particular plant is in the phylum Magnoliophyta. It's a flowering plant. Don't worry about that right now. I'm just showing you how we get to the species name, right? There's the class, there's the order, there's the family name, and then, oh, what do you know? Genus and species name. And once again, the first word of the species name, which is Catharanthus, is the same as the genus, but the species name, whereas we are Homo sapiens, the Madagascar periwinkle is Catharanthus roseus. And if you think about this, if you're going to be using a specific plant to make something like a medicine, and you want to tell a colleague who lives in a totally different place what the plant is and how to use it to make a medicine, you need to be really specific about what plant you're talking about. You don't want to just say, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, so I got this purple flower plant, and this like purple flower plant is great, and it totally makes cancer medicine. So you should totally use, so if you see purple flower plant, use that, right? Like as if people have the phone anymore. Oh, everyone uses buds now anyways, but you get me. I'm just saying that if you're going to use it to make medicine, you need to be really specific. You got to say, hey, if you want to make cancer medicine, use Catharanthus roseus. So that's important. Okay. And this, you got to give him some props, right? I will say over the time of science, many scientists look like this old white guy, right? And that is true, but look, things are starting to change now, and we're getting more diversity in the sciences, but I have to give Carl Linnaeus props because he is the person who actually came up with this whole biological taxonomy thing. He was a Swedish botanist, he was a zoologist and a physician, and he created this system, which he called binomial nomenclature. And just because I like to break these words apart because they can sound really scary. So nomen means name, and clature means like a classification system, and bi means two, and nomial also means name. So binomial means two name, nomenclature means naming system. So a two name naming system. And the reason it's called that is because, like, remember with our Homo sapiens, right? How many words does that make? Two names, two name naming system. Same thing with the Catharanthus roseus, two name naming system. So binomial nomenclature. Each species has a unique name that consists of two parts, the genus and the specific epithet. So in our previous examples, it is always two names. Yep, it's always two names. In our previous examples, right, the species name, Homo sapiens, species name, Catharanthus roseus. In those species name, the first word is the genus, and then the second word is the specific epithet. Sometimes you can have varieties of things. Epithet is just what we call this. The specific epithet is the name of this second word. That's just what it's called. Just like genus, right? It's just what it's called. It's what Carl Linnaeus decided to call it. And so that's what we go with, epithet. Okay, yeah, I don't know. That's what he picked. When you write a species name, you might notice here that they're all italicized. So when you write a species name, either in with your pen or pencil or typing it on a computer, to be correct, you always want to have it either underlined or italicized. This is something if you're in lab and if you are taking the lab class and you have to identify something by species, you want to keep that in mind to always underline it because you'll be writing with hand. But if you're typing it, italicized is fine. Just some other stylistic things. The genus word is always capitalized, as you can see here, Homo sapiens, right? First word is always capitalized, but the specific epithet is never capitalized. And if you've referred to a species name already, you don't have to keep saying Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens. You can say H sapiens. So for example, here, see, evidence suggests the Homo sapiens first domesticated food approximately 10,000 years ago. Several food domestication events occurred over thousands of years, and modern day H sapiens still eat many of those staples, right? So that's totally fine. You might see that in your lab manual or in the textbook with like, you know, an abbreviated genus. And if you want to talk about lots of species that are in one genus, use this little stylistic thing, SP. So if you wanted to talk about all of the species that are in the genus Catharanthus, you would write Catharanthus SP. Like if I can't do it with Homo sapiens because there are no other species in the genus Homo anymore, right? There's just us, just Homo sapiens. So you won't ever see Homo SP because that just doesn't exist. All right, I think we're done. Yes, okay. So there's quiz number 1 is available on Canvas now. It's due by Friday by midnight. I think technically it's probably not open until 9 p.m., but I can go on and make it available now. I'd recommend though, like definitely don't feel rushed. You have until Friday before midnight. The lecture slides are available on Canvas now. And just kind of click through them, maybe make some notes, and just take your time before trying to do the quiz. But I will open it as soon as we break for the day here. Yeah. With that, next class is on Monday, and we will talk about tissues and stems for the second lecture. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them here. Otherwise, you can send me an email. However you guys want to do that. But I hope you guys had a great first class, and I look forward to a really productive summer. It's going to be fun. I want you guys to enjoy plants, so you know, try to have fun with it. And if you feel confused about anything, please just reach out to me, okay? All right, yay. Well, thank you for those of you who are writing nice things in the direct message. Thank you. And thank you guys. Have a great rest of your night. And
Professor, can I ask you a question?
yeah.
About so some of the countries are already struggling with plant existence, like Africa and like Middle Eastern countries. What is the reason, or what is the reason behind that?
Because when you say struggling, can you
as I mentioned, it's increase of population.
Yeah.
But in Africa, people are starving because they don't have enough food supplies to
Sure.
feed people. So what is the real reason? Are they because of the drought, because they don't have enough water, because like what is the main reason?
So unfortunately, it's many things all at once. It's not one thing. Definitely something like money.
Mhm.
Money kind of covers a lot of ground, right? So meaning like if you're people who have a lot of money, you might not have food to grow. Maybe you don't have water to grow food, but you can buy the food from somebody else, right? Or go to war and take over a place that might have better area to make food, right? So definitely a lot of roads lead to money for sure. But I'll say there's a lot of different factors. People eat a variety of different things. People farm in a variety of different ways. The way that the crops are harvested and then dispersed to people are mitigated by both things at the community level and at the government level. Sometimes a place might be sufficient in that it can make enough food, but then people come and take the food. So there's it's very complicated about why, in terms of food, having access to food, there's ecological reasons like no rain, or maybe a plant disease, right? Or a pest, right? That can cause problems. But then there's also human induced challenges too.
Thank you.
Yeah, complicated. Okay, if anyone else has any questions, I'm happy to answer right now, or you can feel free to send me an email, and feel free to write in the discussion board threads for lecture 1, because that's also available now. All right. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much. And next time I see you, I'll be in Michigan.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Just want to see here. Okay, bye.